Does hybrid flooring need subfloor preparation? Well, the answer is yes, and the answer is no. It really depends on subfloor and the condition of the subfloor. I'm going to talk down three different scenarios here. I'm going to talk about tiles firstly, because this becomes one of the biggest questions, like can we install directly over top of tiles? And the answer is yes, and the answer is no. And I'm going to go down the yes scenario. And this becomes a personal opinion. And I'm going to give you the example of my own home. So we had meter by meter polished porcelain, very narrow grout lines, but the way that the tiles had been laid, terrible, because the subfloor was up, down, up, down, up, down. The beauty of it, the Luxfield board could bend enough to go out and up over the undulation. Does it feel completely solid and perfect underfoot? Well, this is when you've got to have a little bit of a compromise. The flatter the subfloor, the smoother it is, the better it's going to feel. Because the board's flexible and the ground is flat. Well, then it's got no air gap between. It's completely solid and it feels the best. There's no doubt about it. But this is not the case. For 99% of all subfloors, there's a little bit of wiggle room. And it becomes literally a personal opinion on how you desire for your floor to feel. When we go over top of tiles, you're either just going to float it straight over top of them, and there's a little bit of compromise because essentially there's little gaps where the grout lines is. So if you knock it with your knuckles, there's a little bit of a hollow point there. Didn't bother me at all because I saved myself literally nearly $40 a square meter in leveling compound. The speed of installation was there. It was a hell of a lot easier. And I found it okay. My wife was like, we probably should have done that. Then I weighed up the pros and cons to it, and you're like, you know what? This is good. This is workable. The next one there is you can improve that by putting a leveling compound down. So this is a flood coat leveling compound, which is essentially bags of self-leveling compound get mixed up to a liquid, poured out over the subfloor, and this creates like a perfectly smooth and level substrate. And then it will all be dependent on cost, depending how many bags get used. If you do a professional, it's going to range from about 25 up to 65, depending on depth. So if you have 10 millimeters worth of leveling compound versus 3, well, there's more bags of leveling compound, the higher the cost. So you just got to weigh those options up. The next one is down on a concrete substrate. If the texture is smooth and there's a wave in the subfloor, this is fine. We can lay it, the boards can curve and go over it. There's a limit to what can be handling, in its flexibility, but generally, 8 out of 10 times we can just float straight over top of the existing subfloor. Same rules apply. If you've got a little hollow and there's a flex point in it, well, it's not going to feel as good as the completely level and sound bit. There's a little bit of movement in the substrate. A little bit of movement in the board between the substrate. If there's a bit of grittiness and a bit of grime on the floor, that needs to be ground off, scraped off, cleaned, and then the same leveling compound process can happen as well. Like if you're like, bugger that, I want to go all in and make it perfectly smooth, the leveling compound process, putting it down, will give us, hands down, the best result for a feeling underfoot. And then the next one is the timber substrate. This is generally, it's a yellow tongue. This is 2 bits of timber that get butted together with like a tongue and groove system. And sometimes there's a high point. It's a little right angle turn. You got to buzz those join lines down. Once you buzz the join lines down, the beauty of this board again is most homes that are on a second level, they're a little bit older. There's a bit of sag in the yellow tongue. So literally it will go up and down like that. The Luxfield board can go out and over it, where SPC hybrids and other generation like laminate boards cannot. You cannot lay them on it because there's no warranty and the board doesn't flex. So that's where we sit in a bit of a unique category there. And you can go through that leveling compound process again. There is a couple of leveling compounds that are warranted. They're very unique leveling compounds that are warranted straight over top of a yellow tongue substrate. So you can go through that process again. So their answer is yes, floor prep is needed, and the answer is no. Depending on scenario, identify them correctly and then get stuck into it for a beautiful result. We'll talk to you again soon.